Football. Actual football. More than one actual football game. So let's start with it.
I kind of have the Sunday scaries.
Let's do it, man. Yeah, no, it's going to be, yeah.
Well, it's funny. So when Craven and I were at the UTEP-UNT game this past week, we were standing on the sidelines like moments before kickoff.
Yeah.
And right when UNT kicked off, he looked at me and he goes, here we go. We're like, here we go. It's starting. It's starting.
Antacid.
Literally, though.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I get it, right? It's like everything we built up to.
It's here.
Technically started last week, but now it's like really going.
Yeah.
Now we have to have the multi-screen. Now we have to make sure we're, we're paying attention.
It's exciting, though.
Me as somebody with ADHD is not going to have fun this weekend, so I'm going to be like, what?
Eyes.
Basically. So, we picked 3 games each, but let's talk about the game that we didn't pick first, right? Because let's just talk about it, get it out there. TCU at Colorado this Friday. It's also the first game, so like that makes sense chronologically. TCU at Colorado, Sonny Dykes' debut. First time in 20-plus years that Gary Patterson will not be on the sideline for the Horned Frogs. Mike Craven, what are you looking for in this game? I think this is a good opponent for them too. It's not a walkover. It's not a walkover. It's not a team that they should necessarily dominate either. It's a solid overall program. What are you looking for from TCU in this first game? On the road as well, I should mention.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I'm looking for is what you just mentioned, to see a different head coach on the sideline as the head coach without Gary Patterson there is just going to be weird.
By the way, we also don't know the starting quarterback for TCU. So
yeah, that's the next thing. I
don't think Colorado knows their starting quarterback either.
I mean, I was 15
yeah.
the last time that Gary Patterson wasn't the head man at TCU. I was 13 the last time he wasn't at TCU in general. So like it's been my whole life, basically my whole adult life, that he's been roaming the sideline. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll be interesting. And then, like you mentioned, the quarterback stuff, we still don't know if it's Max Duggan or Chandler Morris. We don't know if there's going to be a rotation. We don't know if there's just one guy and he hasn't announced it yet. The game's 48 hours away.
Right. I should clarify, they've released a depth chart, but it does the Max Duggan or Chandler Morris things.
My guess is that both get series in the first half.
Sure.
Like I think they both, like Quinn Ewers, Hudson Carr, like that's dead and dusted, right? Like Quinn Ewers is going to be the guy there. I don't think this one is. I think both of them get reps early on. And then, on the other side, that TCU defense was so bad last year.
Really bad.
Like, they allowed 6 yards a rush, like 34 rushing touchdowns. Joe Gillespie, the new defensive coordinator in town. Like, what does that look like? They're not going to be the 4-2-5 we've seen the Horned Frogs be since, like, last century.
Right.
So what does that look like? Just so many different changes for TCU. You talk about it, you think about it, you think you know what it's going to look like because we've seen Sonny Dykes at SMU. We kind of know the system they're going to run. But it's just going to be such a different view of what the Horned Frogs are. Just to see them kind of start that new chapter is going to be very interesting. They're 14-point favorites, so they should be able to win. And it's the only Power 5 versus Power 5 matchup involving a Texas team.
That's a good point, man. So I think you look at what I think last year's TCU offense was a pretty explosive offense. They made a lot of big plays. They were able to kind of even the Texas game included, where they had to get into a track meet. They were able to kind of do that. But you mentioned it was the defense that just could not keep them in games. And I think luckily they're going against a Colorado offense. We mentioned do not know the starting quarterback. Their offense was not very good last year. I believe their offense was 118th in passing EPA. This is defensively, and then 121 in rushing EPA. So they can give up yards. So TCU, this is a nice little stretch opportunity for the TCU. That was Colorado's offensive numbers. So the TCU defense should be able to do something pretty good against.
They also lost their best running back to the transfer portal too.
Yes.
So they're hurting on offense.
I think this is Chris Wilson's second year as Colorado defensive coordinator, so we'll see if they can turn that around. Shout out Brendan Lewis, by the way, and Melissa. Hopefully he'll be the starting quarterback, because I know he hasn't been necessarily great, but he was there, obviously a Texas guy, and I don't know who the other guy that's in contention is. JT Shrout, never heard of that. Moving on. So let's talk about the games that we actually did pick. All right. Craven, you want to go first?
Sure.
This is where you and Mallory will be this weekend, by the way.
Yeah.
In the Dome, Alamo Dome. Number 24, Houston, at UTSA. Is it sellout? Almost? Close?
It's almost.
I
mean, I think there'll be about 40,000 people in the Alamo Dome, which is enough.
Sure.
That's going to be loud with the dome setting and all that kind of stuff. That's about what it was for Conference USA Championship game, that UAB game. So it'll be loud. It'll be rocking. The best two G5 teams in the state. I'm sure SMU has a bone to pick with that statement, but in my opinion, the best two G5 programs in the state comparative to the conference that they play in. Mm-hmm. I think both are conference championship favorites. I think UTSA, even if they start 0-3, the only other team in contention is probably UAB, maybe even North Texas. Yeah. But in the American, Houston's got the best schedule they could possibly hope for. They don't play Cincinnati in the regular season. Mm-hmm. Their two biggest tests are the first two games of the year. Mm-hmm. They go at UTSA, at Texas Tech. If they can get through those games, specifically if they can get through them and win them in impressive fashion, mm-hmm. they have a chance to run the table and really knock on the door of the college football playoffs, specifically with Cincinnati doing that last year. They're in the same conference. They would have the same record. They'd have to beat Cincinnati in the American Championship, theoretically. So there's a lot of high hopes in Houston. And if we flash forward a year ago to what we would talk about with Houston, the expectations have just grown so much for both of these programs, right, that it's going to be exciting to kind of see, because they're at the cusp. Both of those programs are just right on the cusp of national relevance. Mm-hmm. Houston moving to the Big 12, UTSA kind of stepping into the G5 darling, everybody's new favorite team type deal. A lot of returners, Clayton Tune, Nathaniel Dell for Houston, Frank Harris, a trio of wide receivers for UTSA. Both defenses are really good. Houston's favored by 4. I think it's going to be a really, really good game.
Are you surprised that Tajon Henry's getting the start at running back?
No, not really. I mean, I think he's a guy who he's done it for the program, mm-hmm. and I think coaches care about that. In week 4, I bet Brandon Campbell's probably the guy getting more touches, and sure. Brandon Campbell may get more carries on Saturday. But Tajon Henry's been there. He's kind of proven himself. He's stuck through a lot of stuff. He's matured a lot. Mm-hmm. At Texas Tech, that was his rap, and at Houston, he's been nothing but a model citizen from all on accounts. So I think that's rewarding a guy who's been in the program, mm-hmm. and they're going to share the backfield. So you might as well put an or next to that one, because I think sure. they both get about the same amount of touches.
That's fair. Mallory, you're also going to be there, though, so I want to get your opinion on the game overall. What are you looking forward to? Obviously, it's hard to think, as you mentioned, with outside of SMU, it's hard to think of another G5 matchup like this. Mm-hmm. And also to start the season with both programs having so much momentum. What are you kind of looking forward to?
Dude, I'm looking forward to just seeing a college game at the Alamo Dome. Yeah. I've only been to one game at the Alamo Dome, and it was a basketball game. It was for UIL State Girls State Championship tournament. But yeah, I'm really excited. I'll be there. Hopefully we'll get some post-game interviews towards after the game. And the good thing about this is that whoever wins will be able to grab content because they're both Texas schools. So I'm really excited. I think Houston and UTSA are both great programs. I'm leading heavily towards Houston, though, just because they seem like the more complete team. They seem just I think overall, too, offense, defensively, they're bigger, they're faster. I just think that they've got more talent on both sides of the ball. I'm
kind of worried of a sneaky blowout.
Not
a butt-kicking blowout, but probably 3 scores ish. Yeah. I'm kind of nervous about that. I just think the trenches is just leaning way too much in Houston's favor. As much as I feel like this will be a game where we go into halftime man, this is a 1-score game. UTSA might be up, and I just think Houston kind of puts it to them in the second half, which I think would be more of a testament to how good Houston could be this year. We mentioned potentially best G5 program in the country, and I think that status creates a larger separation from other just good G5 programs, which UTSA is a good G5 program, but when you separate yourselves as New Year's Six potential versus everybody else, Cincinnati has done it to you. Cincinnati's done it to SMU, right? I think the second half is where we potentially see that gap start to materialize.
I mean, Houston has a Power 5 roster.
Sure.
Yes.
They're bringing in transfers, they're bringing in recruits that are going to Big 12, right? That's why they're there at Houston. They're going to have the talent advantage. I think the scary thing for UTSA is the pass rush. They're without Clarence Hicks. It's probably going to take a couple games to figure out who that new guy off the edge is going to be. And if Clayton Tune has a lot of time, that's trouble, right? I don't know who guards Nathaniel Dell, And so, I think both teams put up a lot of points. I'd probably lean towards the over, but I think I'm with you guys. I think the second half, Houston's overall depth and just experience and size plays a role there.
Yep. Last year, UTSA was 87th defensively in passing EPA, so it could potentially be bad if they can't get to Clayton Tune.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to my game, Saturday at 4:30 p.m., Texas State versus Nevada. Mike Craven, who is Nevada's starting quarterback?
That's a great question. I don't know. And they played last week, too. I should know that.
They played right down the road from us.
Oh, Shane
Illingsworth.
Illingsworth.
Formerly of Oklahoma State.
Boom, I nailed that one. I had to go back into my brain.
For those of you listening to that, saying you knew it, you're lying. You did not. So I want to play this game every week where we just find a starting quarterback in the game or oh, he's here now?
Yeah.
Right? Like Keaton Slovis at Pitt. Right, just everybody just traded quarterbacks and just decided that we don't. Yeah,
that's going to be the most interesting part of week 1 is going. Hey,
this guy's here. Look at that. Right, JT Daniels is somewhere. I forgot where he's at. He's out. Not West Virginia. Is West Virginia? I think it might be West Virginia. I think JT Daniels is at West Virginia because they made a big deal about him
with
versus
Graham
Slovis, the USC quarterback.
So. For me, it's always Adrian Martinez to Kansas State.
Yes.
And Casey Thompson to Nebraska. They're everywhere. It's crazy.
They don't make sense.
Musical chairs.
Point is, I was looking at it up. I was like, they got Shane Illingsworth. Interesting. That's all I know about Nevada. Point being, this line for some reason is close. Really close. It was a pick 'em until an hour ago. It feels like.
It's wild.
And Texas State.
Until I got my bet in.
Basically, yeah. Craven's the one that pushed it. Pushed it back. No, but seriously, what I'm looking forward to in this game is not even if Texas State wins this. The thing with Texas State is, when it comes up against other respectable G5 programs, they have always fallen flat. And not even lost, right? Again, there's no shame in losing to a solid program, but fallen flat, gotten beaten. Last year, they got embarrassed by Eastern Michigan, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not even a solid G5 program. I'm looking for energy. I'm looking for a spark. There's depth now, right? Spavital's talked a lot about their depth, about their size, speed, all that stuff. I'm looking for that, right? I'm looking for Lane Hatcher to come out and be the guy that's all of a sudden a designated captain in his first year on campus, right? He was one of the 4 or 5 captains selected by the team. I'm looking for that guy to show up, right? The Lane Hatcher freshman sophomore year at Arkansas State, that was one of the best in the Sun Belt. And I'm looking for the defense because there's a joke running around that the only reason the defensive coordinator hasn't been fired yet is because of his last name. Mm-hmm. And they have not improved under Zach Spavital. And so I'm looking for a team to come out with an edge, to come out energized. You look at Spavital's second year, I believe in 2020, they came out and challenged SMU, right? They came out and looked really good against SMU. And then they played a really good UTSA team and almost beat them, right? I'm looking for that type of level. I'm obviously, hopefully not the latter half of the season where they kind of tailed off, but I'm looking for that kind of energy because this is an important year for Texas State. And if they come out and they lose 35-10, right, at Nevada, and you're supposed to trot back home and try to energize a fan base, I don't know.
Good luck.
Good luck, exactly. So that's what I'm looking for personally. That's why this is my game of the week.
Yeah, I mean, Nevada only beat New Mexico State by 11 points.
I was about to say, didn't
23 to 12,
50-something yards or something?
Yeah, Illingsworth had 51. Nate Cox, their backup, had 27. They both threw about the same amount of passes, you know. So who knows what that's gonna look like on Saturday. They did run the football pretty well. You know, they had 2 guys over 60 yards. One of them with 109 yards, average over 5.5 yards a carry. So it'll be interesting to see what Nevada is. In my head, Nevada's a better football team than Texas State.
Well, just because you imagine, right? You imagine the old pistol offense. You still imagine probably half the people listening to this probably still think Jay Norvell is the head coach there.
Exactly. But this is a big opportunity for Texas State because this isn't a game that you put on the schedule a couple years ago thinking it's a win.
Sure.
So you can steal a win here.
Right.
And the goal is to get to 6. Yes. Right? The Sun Belt West is winnable. Maybe not winnable, but you can have a good record. You can get second. You can pick up 3 or 4 Sun Belt wins. If they can steal an out-of-conference game that they, on paper, aren't supposed to win when it's put on the schedule, now all of a sudden they're closer to that 6-win mark. And that 6-win mark will save Jake Spavital.
Yeah.
And so, for me, this is all about getting a bowl game, and this has become a really important game for Texas State. Like you said, they've had these opportunities to kind of show improvement, to show they're taking steps forward, and to prove to the fan base that, improvements are coming. Mm-hmm. And then they haven't done it. And this year, you're playing a Nevada team that's clearly struggling, that's not as talented as they usually are, under new regime, just transferring, all that kind of stuff. If Texas State can go out there, become 1-0 for the second straight year, and really, put a stamp down of, we beat a solid out-of-conference program, I think that says a lot for what Spavital has been saying all offseason, and that's Texas State is a different Texas State team than we've seen the last couple of years. I'm going to need to see it on the field.
Sure.
And winning a road game against Nevada would be a great first step.
Yep. I agree. I definitely agree. By the way, Ken Wilson is a new Nevada head coach, former co-OC or co-DC, I should say, at Oregon under who's the guy that's now in Miami? Mario Cristobal. So yeah, that's who the new head coach is, and it kind of makes sense that they're pretty bad at throwing the ball.
And he's been at Nevada off and on for like 15 or 20 years.
So I was trying to think of anything depth chart wise that was announced Texas Day, but everybody was basically, I think you basically nailed it in the magazine. So yeah. Alex Costilla starting at left guard. So there's one. I believe there's an injury there. So yeah. Anyway, let's move on. Mallory, your game is SMU North Texas at the hottest team.
No, you're right. SMU
is in Denton.
Yeah.
Okay,
you're right. It's in Denton.
Denton, America.
Sorry about that. SMU at the hottest team in the country. Many are talking about the North Texas Mean Green Saturday at 6:30 p.m. at Apogee. Mallory Hartley, this is your game of the week. Why and why will North Texas pull the upset?
Okay, that's a bold claim here.
I'm asking you. I'm not claiming anything.
All right. I don't think this would have been my game of the week if it weren't for UNT's such dominant showing against UTEP last week. And of course, we kept saying that UNT just has a better game always against UTEP, especially Austin Ani. But I think that really brings up morale, especially to North Texas heading into next year's conference play against a rival right down the road. I think the real test this week is if UNT's offense is going to be able to keep up with SMU's offense. And I think also on the other side of that, if SMU can perform well against a pretty well-balanced defense in North Texas, like we saw last week. North Texas defense looked really strong, the front seven really strong in the secondary. I think one of their only issues was probably just discipline. They had one drive where they got 3 personal foul penalties in a row, and one of them was for taunting. I mean, really? I think really they just got to get that under control defensively, and I think they're going to be really, really stout on defense. Offense, a couple of question marks here and there. I don't know how well Austin Ani is going to perform under this stress, lots of pressure from SMU's defense. But I think overall it's going to be a lot closer than people think. I think it's going to be a lot closer than games in matchups in the past. Again, we don't really know what SMU really looks like, especially because we got new coach Rhett Lashley. You have a lot of transfers coming in. The one transfer I'm definitely concerned about is Kamar Wheaton from Alabama. I think he's going to look really good against this North Texas team. But interesting stat, too. Since 2014, SMU has won 6 of the last 8 meetings against North Texas. So track record says SMU's going to win, but maybe North Texas will pull the upset. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, SMU enters as an 11-point favorite. I think that's about right. I'm really excited to watch Rhett Lashley's offense versus Phil Bennett's defense. Like, anybody who listens to this show knows that I'm a huge fan of Phil Bennett. What he did in the second half last week against UTEP was pretty awesome. Yeah. You know, like they shut him out. They took away the deep game and made UTEP, have to earn it play after play, and that's just not what UTEP does. It's going to be different this week, though, because Tanner Mordecai is really good. That wide receiver group may be as good as it was last year, despite losing a couple of guys to the NFL, like what they did in the transfer portal with Jake Bailey, Bo Corrales, really impressive. Rasheed Rice is going to have a big year. Kamar Wheaton, as Mallory mentioned. For me, Austin Ani, can he continue that type of play, right? Can he be that efficient? Can he not throw interceptions? Last year, he threw 9 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. So he's a guy who, is a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio for most of his career. Let's see if he can play that well and that efficient against a different defense that's going to come after him and be more athletic. But on the flip side of it, how fast is SMU going to play?
Yeah.
Like right out of the gates.
Sure.
Like, is it one of those things that in October they get to their full offensive speed, or is it right out of the gates we're running a play every 10 seconds? I want to see how quickly SMU can take on the identity of Rhett Lashley. I think it's going to be quicker than usual because he was there.
Sure.
A lot of those guys have run that offense. He recruited a lot of those guys to that offense. And so I think SMU is going to be pretty good this year. And as Mallory mentioned, this is a preview of the American Conference next year. North Texas is going to find out how close they are roster construction-wise to the talent at SMU. North Texas has played a game, How much does that come into factor? They probably knocked off some of that rust, some of the discipline stuff. Does SMU fumble the ball a few times? Does SMU get a couple dumb penalties because it's their first game? How much of an advantage is that to have played a week 0 game? Or is it a disadvantage because SMU has Tate?
Sure.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a lot of good question marks with this one. I think it's clearing away the third best game in the state.
Yeah. I'm wondering about SMU's defense. I didn't watch Liberty, so I don't know what Scott Simon's system looks like. They were a pretty solid defense last year, solid against the run in particular.
It's a 4-2-5.
Yeah, but I'm saying just overall production.
Right.
If UNT does want to be able to run the ball effectively, at least we've seen SMU as a team, not under this scheme specifically, we've seen them as a team contain the run really well. Does that rob UNT of maybe a go-to, or does Seth Luttrell kind of see something with Jake Roberts in the passing game and the kind of that short intermediate route stuff that can give SMU some issues, right? Yeah. We saw them struggle against the pass last year, so that maybe they do take the reins a little bit off of Austin-Ani and give him that safety blanket of Jake Roberts, but also maybe a little bit more of a vertical threat, especially at home, especially with this potentially a good crowd now that there's steam behind the program. It's like, oh, we got to go. There's some people at UNT. One, it's first home game, so obviously freshmen, all that stuff are going to go. But obviously there's also people around the area that's like, oh, they beat UTEP. They might be pretty good. We got to go check this game out. It's against an inner city rival, or area rival in SMU, future conference, like you mentioned, future conference rival. I think UNT should come out on fire. I think this is their opportunity to be like, you know what? Let's see what we can do, right? I don't want to say they got nothing to lose, because obviously if you get your butt kicked and you go to the same conference as this team, all of a sudden it's really embarrassing. But I'm going to say that there's some wind behind the program now. There's some wind behind what they got going on. And I think that they silenced a lot of critics last week with that dominant performance that, it was close in the first half, but it was more self-inflicted wounds that kind of kept it close. And then once they shored that up, it was not a contest, right? On the road in a hostile environment.
Yeah, I mean, North Texas offensive line didn't allow a sack last week, only allowed 2 quarterback pressures. This SMU defensive line is good.
Yes.
Elijah Chapman, DeVere Levelston, those guys can go. Mm-hmm. And so can they replicate that performance? Because like we've talked about, Austin-Ani, if given time, is going to find some dudes. How good is that North Texas offensive line? We're going to find out more on Saturday, because they were super impressive against a UTEP defensive line that we all considered to be pretty good.
Yep. Alrighty. So those are the 3 games that I guess 4 plus the TCU game. The games that we picked as the big games. Now, let's get to games that are also happening. All right, moving on to, we're going to call this the lightning round. I don't know how fast we'll actually go, but especially this week, we can go pretty fast because I ain't really looking forward to these. Number 6, Texas A&M versus Sam Houston State. This one's actually kind of a little bit sneakily saucy. I'm not saying Sam Houston State has a chance, but a little bit fun, a little interest here. Saturday at 11 a.m. I don't know. That's pretty good. I like that opponent for A&M, right? It's not a pushover, right? Sam Houston State's going to come out, try to do something. Probably not, but it's not a team that A&M should beat 70-0 either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's about as good of an FCS program as you could put on the schedule. Yep. And for Sam Houston this year, this is their Super Bowl. They have 2 games that matter on their schedule this year. That's A&M this week, and then SFA, because it's the last battle of the Piney Woods, right? They can't win a conference championship. They can't go to the playoffs. When I asked Casey Keeler, how do you this roster, the guys on your team, they're used to playing for something. What are the carrots this year? The first thing he said was that A&M game, right? Mm-hmm. So this is going to be a big game for that Sam Houston roster. I think the defense is going to play pretty well.
I was about to say, based on what we saw from A&M in that spring game, that's going to leave some opportunities.
This could be close for a little while just because A&M's not scoring. Yeah. Now, I don't think Sam Houston can move the ball against A&M.
I was about to say that's where the issue comes in.
I'm really excited to see what Walter Nolan looks like against an FCS offensive line. It could get a little scary hours for Sam Houston's offense. But if this is 13-3 at half, I'm not overly surprised, right? And so I think there's some interesting storylines here. How does Haynes King look? Is Evan Stewart a star at wide receiver like we think? What does that young 5-star defensive line look like in their first game? There's plenty of reasons to watch this game.
Mm-hmm.
All righty. Mallory, you got anything to add to that one? No?
Nope.
Okay. I don't either. UTEP at number 9, Oklahoma,
Pain.
Saturday at 2:30 p.m. Craven, how fast are you turning this game off?
I don't know if I'm ever turning it on.
I will, just because I don't know what Brent Venables Oklahoma is.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess for that reason, I mean, Mallory and I will be.
As a Texas publication, we kind of got to know what Oklahoma's up to.
Right.
Like, are they a Big 12 threat? You know, like, are they an actual, like, still Oklahoma? Right?
I guess my answer, I would say back to that, nothing that happens on Saturday will determine any of that.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I've taken myself off the UTEP bus about as quickly as I jumped on it, you know? They weren't good last week, right? No. And the things that they
wasn't fun to watch.
And the things they weren't good at last week are things that Oklahoma is going to make them look even worse at, right? Like if you can't get pressure against North Texas, you're not getting pressure against Oklahoma.
Sure.
If you can't stop the run against North Texas, you're not stopping the run against Oklahoma. If you can't get over the top of the North Texas defense consistently, you're not getting over the top of Oklahoma, right?
Yep.
So this one feels about as ugly as Brent Venables wants it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And for Dana Dimmel, you just got to hope to like build a little bit of confidence somehow and then just stay healthy and just get back to El Paso for the New Mexico State game. Like this is a classic week 1 season opener game. The problem for UTEP is they already played a game, you know? So like this is just an exercise in pain, honestly, for UTEP.
This is just national attention for them, honestly.
Yeah, it's a paycheck.
Like, that's kind of what it is.
This is just paycheck.
Yeah. Yeah, I read something too about, you know, they've got a new defensive coordinator over at Oklahoma too. They're putting more stress on their secondary. And if we know anything about UTEP, they're kind of a boomer bust offense. So if they're not capitalizing on those big explosive plays, are you really getting anywhere? You know?
Yeah. And North Texas got pressure on Gavin Hardison, and I don't know everything about Oklahoma's front seven, but I know how Brent Venables coaches football, and they lead the world in tackles for loss and sacks when he's at Clemson. So my idea or thought is that Oklahoma's going to make life really, really long on that UTEP offensive line.
Yep. Yeah. Another game that I might not turn on. Rice at number 14 USC Saturday at 5 p.m. Oh, boy. Craven, what was your favorite little tidbit about the first off, shout out to Stats of War on Twitter.
We're big Parker fans here
he puts out his
at
statistical
Dave Campbell's
previews every week for every single game. I think every single game between FBS programs.
Right.
And there was a funny little tidbit that Craven noticed in the Rice USC graphic.
Parker's graphic for Rice gives Rice projected like 1.8 points or something, like 2 points basically. Like he's projecting a safety. Like it's like we don't think the Rice offense is going to score anything, but maybe USC will like fumble the ball in the end zone or something like that. You know?
It's not even going to be up to Rice. It's going to be up to USC.
You know, like maybe they drop something or I don't know. Who knows, right? Gabe Taylor gets a fumble and returns it back for a touchdown or something. Because we all go into the season going like, I think the Rice defense is going to be okay,
right?
But that offense is going to be pretty bad again.
Yep.
And then the first projected points of the year comes out and it's like 2. And you're like, okay, that makes me, I guess, feel better and worse at the same time.
Count.
Yeah.
This one doesn't count.
My preview for this game will be wait till they play McNeese next week.
Yeah. Literally. That's our preview.
God, I mean, enjoy LA.
Yeah.
You know
what? That's
national attention too. There you go.
You know what I mean? Like that Houston to LA, it's a direct flight. There's going to be some sunshine out there. It's going to rain all week in Houston, right? So like get out there. LA's fun.
God,
there's some reasons to go to LA.
Stinks, man. USC, McNeese, Louisiana, Houston.
It stinks for Rice, yeah.
That stinks.
Yeah, it's not a great it's not a great schedule. If you're trying to get to 6 wins and get to a bowl game and save your job,
right?
That's not the out of conference schedule you would like to see.
Nope.
But you have to play Houston every year.
Sure.
You got to play a money game every year.
Sure.
And McNeese is a win. It's the Louisiana one that's tough, right? It's like, man, give me a G5 that
right.
we can
It's
beat,
like Monroe. Like, come
right.
on, at least Monroe.
Yeah.
Right. At least the other one, not the good one, but whatever. Anyway, moving on. This one, not interested for anything productive, but just to see what happens. Number 10 Baylor versus Albany Saturday at 6 p.m. What's Baylor look like? This is a flex game, right? You just kind of flex your muscles, dominate, but I want to see it, right? I want to see that defense still come out humming. I want to see Blake Shapen maybe get a little vertical with the passing game. I want to see if that running game is still very, very, very dominant. Can they do it? Probably, but I want to see it, right? This is just a game where you're like, you watch the first quarter, be like, cool, done, right? Watch first quarter. If they're dominant, awesome, get out, basically.
I'm going to say something that sounds crazy.
Uh-oh, here we go.
I know that Abram Smith ran for a school record amount of yards last year. I think it was 1,601 or 1,602 yards. I think the running game at Baylor is as good, if not better, this year.
Interesting.
It's more talented.
Okay.
The running back room is more talented. Like, Abram Smith was a linebacker until spring of 2020. You know, like he's not – it's not like Dave Aranda, Jeff Grimes got to campus and, like, he was like a star running back that was sure to, like, rush for 1,600 yards. They moved him over there. Like, the previous staff didn't think he was good enough running back, put him at linebacker, you know? So the guys that they have now on like those are dudes that were recruited to play running back. Tay McWilliams, those kind of guys are they're good, you know. And so I think with that offensive line, people have heard me talk about this a lot. Your running game is a function of your offensive line. They're only going to be better in year 2 of that system playing together because offensive line is like the most cohesive unit, you know, on the field, right? And the more they play together, the better. They return 4 out of 5 starters. I think that running game is going to be really good. My interest in this game rests completely on the skill position players of Baylor.
Yes.
I want to see what their wide receivers look like, and I want to see if that running back room is as talented as I think it can be. Maybe they don't have a lead guy that goes for 1,600, but I think they're going to rush for as many yards average, as many yards rushing as they did last year.
That's fair. Another game that, you know, not really something to say productive, but just something I'm really interested in watching. Texas Tech, Joey Mcguire's debut versus Murray State, Saturday at 7 p.m. Again, similar to Baylor, but kind of obviously on another scale. A game that shouldn't worry them, right? But we've all seen Texas Tech struggle against FCS programs in the past. So, but also, what's his offense look like? What's his defense look like? Are we going to see Zach Kittley throwing the ball 50 times? I don't think we'll expect that, but I wouldn't be shocked to see it, right? What does Joey Mcguire's Texas Tech look like on the field? Mallory.
I was just going to say, I think on paper this does not look like a fun game to watch, but I think people are so excited over the hype with Joey Mcguire and stuff. I think that it's going to be a really popular game to watch. Is it on TV? Is it on?
I think it's on ESPN
Plus or something like that.
Yeah,
so yeah,
I will
you
double check
definitely
that, but I'm pretty sure it is.
Can watch it. But
well, Murray State's better than a lot of people think. Like, I mean, I don't think they're going to beat Texas Tech or anything like that, but like Murray State's a good football team. So I think this is a good early test for Texas Tech because things get much harder quickly for the Red Raiders. They're going to host Houston the next week, then they go to North Carolina State. They start Big 12 play, I think, against Texas at home, right? So like they have a pretty loaded front half of the schedule. We're going to find, I mean, Ish mentioned it. I am super fascinated to see how many times they throw the ball. Like,
are we back to Red Raider football?
Right. Like how close to even? Because we've talked about this all offseason. Like Zach Kittley is known to throw the ball around the yard. But Texas Tech's best two offensive players arguably are running backs.
And Joey Mcguire said he wants to run the
Joey ball. Mcguire wants to run. I mean, we all watched him at Cedar Hill. We all watched what Baylor, made their identity offensively, right? Where is the middle point? Is the middle point 40 passes?
Right.
Is that Zach Kittley going, well, I barely passed the ball.
Like a pitch count.
I only threw it 40 times. Like, what do you want me to do, Joey? Like, come on. Or is it closer to 30? Or does Joey go, man, just do you, man? That's why I hired you. Right. You want to throw it 55 times? Go throw it 55 times. Like, do whatever you think is going to do best for us. That's what I'm most fascinated about is, like, they should win this game by double digits, 20 points, something like that. What does the new Texas Tech offense look like? Yeah, that's my thing. Like, you don't hire Zach Kittley to run a balanced offense, right? He hasn't done it. He came from Cliff Kingsbury's Tech to HBU to Western Kentucky, and he just threw the damn ball, right? Like, so I'm not saying he doesn't know. Obviously, he's a smart guy. He knows offense. He can develop a balanced attack if he's required to or if Joey Mcguire wants him to. But I don't make that hire. Right? I really think, and how quickly that came together. Obviously, Sonny Cumbie came. If Sonny Cumbie was the offensive coordinator, okay, then I would expect more of a balanced attack. He's obviously coached under Gary Patterson, played under Mike Leach, so he has the knowledge of like a lot of aspects of the game. But as soon as he we knew that it was Cumbie and Kittley kind of in the beginning, and we kind of assumed that he would keep Cumbie for continuity purposes and keeping kind of a tie to Texas Tech. But once Cumbie left, it was very quickly Zach Kittley. So it was almost like Joey Mcguire was like, okay, here's the guy I kind of really wanted. They kind of had that feel. And I think that Joey Mcguire secretly just knows that he wants to run this offense here. So, I don't know. He's a live wire guy. I would not be shocked if they're just throwing 60 times in this game. Over under 40 passes on Saturday.
I'm going over. Going over.
I think I am too.
I mean, like, again, my thing is, I quote-unquote worry if Tyler Shuck is that type of quarterback.
Yeah.
Right? Like, Tyler Shuck came from Oregon where they, probably execute you if you throw the ball more than 30 times, right?
They don't execute anybody in Oregon, I don't think.
That's fair. Not by the state, at least. Mario Cristobal will just take you out back and just take care of himself. But no, we're watching Justin Herbert in the NFL throw the ball all over the place, and he was stuck running the ball for 4 yards at Oregon. Right. I don't know if Tyler Shuck can, sling it. He probably can. He's there for a reason. He was a projected first-round pick at one point in his career for a reason, for tools and all that. So I want to see if they want him throwing the ball that much and just what they overall look like. And then, of course, the defense. If Albany all of a sudden has 20 in the third quarter, you're like, that's
Murray State.
Or Murray State. Sorry, yes, Albany was Baylor. Murray State has 20 points in the third quarter. You're like, ew. Tech, what's going on? I want to see Tech's defense dominate a team in a way we have not seen in my lifetime.
I'm going to take the under on the throwing attempts.
Okay.
And I think that may change by October. You get in a Big 12 play and maybe the reins come off and they just start throwing the ball around the yard.
Fair.
I think Saturday they're going to make a real effort to put on film a balanced attack. And I think they're going to have a lead to where they can rely on that running game. Now, the next week against Houston, if they're down 17-7,
sure,
I think Joey looks at Zach and goes, score
just
point.
Throw the ball.
And then maybe on film, Joey sits back and goes, that's kind of what we got to do.
Sure.
And so maybe it changes. But I think Saturday against Murray State, we see a much more bridled offensive play calling by Zach Kittley than we were used to the last two stops.
Yeah. All right. Lastly, we got the most anticipated Louisiana Monroe involved game, and I can remember, Texas versus ULM in DKR Saturday at 7 p.m. I don't know. This is going to be underwhelming just because, I don't know, they're going to look great. I don't know. They're going to, for all the controversy about the depth chart, about the quarterback, about whatever wide receivers missing, all this stuff, they're going to look great.
They'll be fine.
It's going to be probably on par with how against Louisiana. They looked against Louisiana last year because Monroe's worse. Quinn Ewers is going to put up probably 300 yards. Bijan Robinson's, I'd probably go about 90-ish, 100-ish, just because they're probably going to pull him pretty early. He's like, cool, we're winning. I don't know. Parker gives Monroe a 0.07% chance of winning this game, which I think is generous. Craven.
I'm most excited to watch Texas's fans expectations grow through the roof.
100%.
It's a roller coaster with Texas. They're either the greatest team in the world or the worst team in the world, according to their fans.
Yes.
After Saturday, they will be the greatest team in the world. Quinn Ewers will be a future first overall pick in the NFL. Bijan Robinson will be a Heisman Trophy front runner. Xavier Worthy.
How long before they talk themselves into next week?
Oh, yeah. I think mid-second quarter.
Okay.
When they're up 28-0. Quinn Ewers has 180 passes. Bijan Robinson's just chilling. And I think they go, we can beat this team at home in this stadium. We got them.
Mallory hinted at it. Do we get a "We Want Bama" chant?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
100%.
You're going to see it all over Twitter.
100%. I'm from Austin.
Sure.
I know how we roll.
Yeah.
There will 100% be a drunken "We Want Bama"
A lot of freshmen
chant
at the first game.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
How many Instagram captions do you see after the win this week that says "We Want Bama"?
Yeah. Oh, man.
How many do you see? That's all gonna be
it's not the people chanting that have to play. They don't have to line up against Will Anderson. It's going to be like Devon Campbell being like, no, stop chanting.
We don't want Bama.
We don't really want them yet. Sark's no, not until 2025.
Yeah, Texas is minus 37.5 in this one, so at least that's on ESPN now.
Yeah,
so.
Biggest spread of the week for a Texas school because the FCS games don't have spreads. FBS versus FBS, Texas is on top. They're favored by more than Oklahoma is over UTEP.
Yeah. Trust me, ULM's not good. They suck, man. They stink. Terry Bowden, God bless your soul, but I don't know what that program is.
So if you're Sark, how many carries would you give Bijan? Because that's I know this is going to sound dumb, but
would you?
I wouldn't give him 5.
I was about to say fair. However many he has when you're up 14, just if he has 3 and you're up 14, cool, that's it, you're done.
I treat this like an NFL preseason game where I give him a series.
That's fair.
Hey, well, we're going to let you run the ball the first 3 times. If we go 3 and out, you're done. If we keep going, you can have a couple more carries, but I'm not risking any of it.
No. On a serious note, though, I will say this. We've had questions about Texas' defense, right? We've had questions about their inability to get transfers. We've had questions about the youth of the talent they have acquired. There are a lot of unknown names outside of maybe a DeMar Van Overshown. I'm not saying ULM's good. they started off last year decently, but if they mess around and all of a sudden, drive in the field, you're like, wait, what's going on here? They're not going to win this game, but this is a trap in terms of a team just kind of second year in Terry Bowden, whatever, first game of the year. If their scripted series go kind of decently, you're like, all right, I'm going to have some interesting questions to raise about the Texas defense.
If Texas lines up in like that 2 deep high shell that they ran all last year, I'm just going to turn off the TV.
Right. It's like, trust me.
Get 8 guys in the box.
Please.
Go play some physical man-on-man football on the outside and be the University of Texas.
Yep. By the way, shout out Chandler Rogers, who's the quarterback for ULM. I believe he is. Yes, he is Mansfield Lake Ridge product. So,
okay.
There you go. So if Chandler Rogers, no offense, but if Chandler Rogers is driving the ball in the Texas defense, we got some problems. So
Gary Patterson just comes down from the booth in the second half with his purple shirt on,
just
calling defense.
He just parachutes down from. He just jumps out the press box and just.
Because that's the thing. Like for those who don't know, Gary Patterson, like if you had the purple shirt on, he was usually calling plays, and like he would have like sometimes he'd have a black one on the first half.
He'd still have a white horn on it, but it's purple.
Right. And he would come in the second half and be like, "Oh, Gary's wearing his purple shirt. He's over it. He's taking over play calling duties."
Pete Kwiatkowski's
like,
on the bench.
Yeah,
exactly.
Exactly.
Down, sulking.
Exactly.
So,
Charlie
anyway,
Brown.
Yeah. So anyway,